All right, I think we are live. All right, hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Data Insight. We're going to get started here in just a second. Just making sure everybody can get logged in. If you are having any trouble, you can type a question in the Q&A or in the chat, actually might be better, and then our behind the scenes person, Jules, will help you out. I always say we're going to start in a minute, and then like 15 seconds later, I start. I don't actually wait the full minute. All right, well, I'm too excited to wait any longer. Oh, there's all my controls. Excellent.
Do you remember there was the late night show host called Craig Ferguson, and he would always finish his show with like an awkward pause for a minute or two. We could do an awkward pause right now.
I think that's what we're doing. Anybody who's sitting here with this is like, what's happening? But I'm still seeing people logged in, so this are logging in, so this is great. And I found my controls, which is even better. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome again to Data Insight. On this episode, we're going to be talking about navigating digital transformations and the power of clean data and metadata and their impact on the success of these projects. A few housekeeping things. Yes, this is being recorded and we will send it to you. We will leave a few minutes at the end for Q&A. You don't have to wait till the end. So if it comes to you while we're talking, just feel free to type that question into the Q&A box. I see some people putting some stuff in chat here. Let me just see what's, okay, that's not for us. Just making sure everybody's okay out there. So yeah, try to use a Q&A for that. The chat, if you have any technical issues or something, go ahead and use that. And like I said, Jules can help you out. So with me today, let me move on here, is Xavery Lisinski from Elements.cloud. So we have a nice different set of insights to give you on the metadata front of this. I'm Olivia Hinkle, the Director of Product Marketing at Validity, the makers of demand tools, Gridway to Connect, and Bright Verify. Coming at you from Cleveland, Ohio today. I know we have a lot of people all over joining us. So Zav, thanks for being here. I'm going to give you a second to say hi to everybody and introduce yourself and tell us where you're at today.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, a flawless pronunciation. Thank you for that. Yes, I'm Xavery, VP of Product at Elements.cloud. I'm joining from United Kingdom, where characteristically it rains.
So I'm hearing that a lot lately. Boston, here, everywhere. We're getting sort of downpour on. All right, well, we have a lot of good information to share with you. We're going to try to keep this to about 35 minutes. So the topics we have are digital transformations, the risks, costs, and failures. We think it's important you know what you're getting yourself into. Where to start with digital transformations. And I put AI here because I know that's hot on everybody's mind, especially after Dreamforce. And then how we, Validity and Elements.cloud, can help you with your digital transformation. And if you notice, I put DX there in parentheses. A lot of times that's used for digital experience. It's also being used to abbreviate digital transformation. So just if you're seeing that out there while you're doing your research, that's what that means. And I want to make sure we were clear on that. All right, so true to Data Insight, I want to hear from you guys. I want to know what's going on, what you guys are experiencing, how you're feeling. And we asked this same poll question that should be popping up for you here in a minute. Back in August. So this was before we went to Dreamforce. And I know this isn't an apples to apple comparison. I'm sure we don't have, everybody from the August show here today listening in, but I just wanted to see if the attitude had changed a little bit. I really had no idea what people were going to say about this app. If they were like, yeah, we're all in, or no, we're waiting. I did this to the PM on the last call. I asked them, like, where do you think people are going to, sit with this? And he had said, well, I think people are a little bit hesitant. They're going to wait to see. Where do you think? Do you think most organizations are adopting it or just kind of in that wait and see mode? Can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm sorry. That was a question to me.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, there was the question to the audience. I would love for this to be like 90% have adopted or are planning to adopt soon, but I think it's going to be probably 10% adopted and 90% maybe are planning not so soon.
Yeah. I cannot see, hang on a second. Oh, there we go. My results popped up. All right, so I have the results from today, and I'm also going to tell you what we saw in August, just so you guys can get an understanding like we do here. So for those of you saying we're not currently using AI and don't have plans to, we're sitting at 28%. It was about 33% in August, so pretty steady. Planning to implement in the next 3 months, we had 11%. Now we were at 19%, so maybe a little fluctuation there, not much. Planning to implement in the next 6 months, we had 22% today, and we were at 33% last time. So maybe a little bit less, until maybe some people went to Dreamforce and thought, oh, I've got some work to do before we start doing this in the next 6 months. And then we're currently using one or more of the Salesforce Einstein functions. We're at 11%, and we were at 19% last time. And then that they have an AI solution implemented, but it's not Einstein, so something outside of the Salesforce ecosystem. We're at 28% today, and last time we were at 10%. So that's a big jump. Yeah. So anyway, those are always fun to just see, what is going on, how you guys are feeling about this. And I was just curious if Dreamforce had changed anything for anybody, but I'll, just good information. So I am going to pass this over to Zab because we have some news for you on the risk, costs, and failures. And I didn't want to deliver this information. I figured I would make him deliver kind of the downer part of this, and I get to give you the relief here later on. So Zab, I'm going to pass it over to you here. Let me flip slides.
Well, you're in marketing, so you're the cheerful one, and I'm in product, so I'm the problem guy. But I think you made that comment in the beginning, which is we talk a lot about AI, and we discussed it preparing for that webinar as well. That AI, but actually, it's a new technology, but in some ways the same old problem with any digital transformation, whatever the technology might be. And that it's remarkably hard. Some stats for you. There was and actually the sources at the bottom. Great. There was a study, or actually a report published in Harvard Business Review, I think last year. 87.5% of all digital transformation projects, on average, fail to achieve their stated objectives. Which is not to say they fail completely. It just they don't achieve what was expected of them. So then you might, okay, so how many actually fail? Like what percentage is an absolute utter failure? And that's 26%. So that was, I think, 2019 study. There's so little ROI that these projects do not make any impactful business change or change in behavior whatsoever for the business. And to put in financial costs, I was, again, Harvard Business Review, I think 2018 or 2019 report on the 2018 state of affairs, which was of the $1.3 trillion invested in technology and projects, 900 billion went to waste, as in didn't really achieve what was meant to, what we're planning to achieve. So so someone asked actually right now, can we define a digital transformation? Assume knowledge. Digital transformation, we can get into very academic definitions here, but I think that the simplest would be it's any large scale project within an organization that aims to introduce new technology and transform how the business operates through that technology. Yeah. So introducing AI is digital transformation. Implementing Salesforce as a CRM is a digital transformation. Automating your business processes, for instance, through flows, is a digital transformation. So it can have many flavors, different scale, different ambition, but that's what it is. Changing how you work through technology. Would you agree, Olivia, by the way, or is that too?
Yeah, actually, that person's question was really serendipitous because that was one of my points is, so how are we defining a digital transformation? And when I look for this stuff, as we do research to present this information, I go to McKinsey a lot, and they had a definition. They've got a couple definition and stances on this stuff that I just really love. And they define digital transformation as the rewiring of an organization with the goal of creating value by continuously deploying tech at scale. And I was like, wow, that is such a good, succinct way of saying that. But the part that really gets me, and I think the part that sort of just justifies why there's a lot of failure here, is we are rewiring an organization. That snippet of this in and of itself, that's not easy. That's a huge undertaking. And it's not one team who's going to do it. You know what I mean? It's got to be an organization-wide effort. So yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think McKinsey agrees.
And I once read a more academic definition where there is a distinction between, let's say, digitalization on the lowest scale, which is just putting things which are manual, maybe you're filing it in literal cabinets to a central system, all the way to a proper digital transformation, which might be completely changing the nature of work. In our company, for instance, we've introduced transcribing software, and that changes the way you work. If you now can transcribe your calls with customers, report on them, query through them, that just changes what sales calls or discovery calls are about, how they're executed. It's just a complete game changer, as an example.
Yeah. I mean, it's uprooting the whole fabric of how we do things. And so the question that I was, sitting here pondering as we were talking about this is, why? What's happening? Because a lot of the stuff that I hear is it's not the tech, it's not the AI solution or the digital solution that you implement that's failing. So McKinsey, again, they said this really well in one of their reports, and they said that successful digital transformations hinge less on how companies use digital and more on how they become digital. And you and I are both in the realm of becoming digital. That's where we have sat for a long time. And that's why we understand this so well, because that's what we do. We help people become digital, whether it's a CRM, whether it's an AI undertaking, whatever it is. We have this view into the data that I think helps us understand, okay, this, the foundation that we have to put in place. And I'm not trying to give any spoiler alerts. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But so that's, that was their take on it. And then I was reading in a Forbes article where they were saying that this is just being led by the wrong people. Not, again, that they're not technical enough, not that they don't know what they're doing. It's just they don't have the soft skills needed to do this, which I thought was really interesting, because this is so tech deep. And now we're like pulling back and being like, well, wait a minute, we need the proper soft skills. But if you think about rewiring an organization, that is done with solid soft skills. Being able to sort of ditch the techie speak, tell compelling customer experience stories, financial stories to your leadership, making sure that you have somebody in the front of this who can impose change across the business in a really positive way, and who's willing to say, here are the KPIs, here are the things that are going to keep us as the development team on this accountable, and you as the end user accountable. So then eventually we can all come together and figure out what we did right and what we need to change. So I thought that was really interesting, that so much of this failure has nothing to do with the tech. It's about how we approach it.
So just to round this up, there's a great book that was published earlier this year called How Big Things Get Done. And it was a study of like 16,000 different projects, not only IT, but ranging even through like infrastructure and everything else. And do you know what percentage of any big projects actually meet the criteria of both being on budget, on time, and delivering the expected results?
No, and I fear you're going to tell me.
So, 0.5%.
How much?
0.5%.
Oh.
1 in 200. And the biggest takeaway from to your point from the book was there is too much tendency to jump into the delivery, the like, let's get to work, and there's not enough planning going on. And that planning includes preparation, includes soft skills, getting the buy-in, doing the analysis as well, preparing the environment, all of that stuff. It's not done usually in enough due diligence. In other words, why projects fail is usually determined before anyone even gets started, any developer or admin even gets started to work on it. The conditions for failure or success are usually decided before that, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah, well, and the fact that you say that, it's like, shoot, my thought just escaped me, but I'm not surprised by it anyway. I think that, yeah, we just need to take a step back and do the planning. Oh, this is what I was going to say. Planning, I think, for people like us, admins, developers like you, people who deal with the product, who are constantly doing, planning can feel very idle and like we're not making a step forward. And it is within the planning, and when it finally comes to that culmination of, here's the story I'm telling, here is the use case I want to have, is when you realize that all those little steps you took along the way, all the research you did, all the preparation, it comes to fruition and it makes a difference. It's just not recognized right away, so it feels idle. It doesn't feel like you're doing anything, but planning is definitely an incredibly active form of contribution to a project like this. So as we sit here and say, hey, only 13% of these things are actually ever going to fully succeed, people are probably sitting there asking the following, if I can skip to my next slide here. Why bother? Why the heck bother with this? If it is costing a ton of money and probably a lot of gray hair and frustration, why are we doing this?
Yeah, the solution is, okay, it's risky, it's costly, let's not do this. Solved.
Right.
Next.
But I think you and I both know, risky and potentially being, very expensive are not reasons to not move forward with something. It's just more of a catalyst to say, I need to move forward properly and cautiously, slowly, you know what I mean? And take my time with this. So I get to give you the good news. And here's why I think everybody should stick with this, and why everybody is going to stick with this. Again, doing some research, I went to the IDC, which is the International Data Corporation, and they had this insights on the state of AI report. And they gave us a couple of reasons why we would want to stick with this, even though it seems really demotivating. And, the primary objective of AI, of these organizations that they spoke to, was for two things: improve operational efficiency, and then improving the customer experience and satisfaction. And early adopters of this. So this study traced these people over 3 years. And so what you're seeing on the screen here is what they found. 35% improvement in innovation, which as a product person has got to be amazing to hear. And this was every year that they were experiencing this over 3 years. And then 33% improved sustainability, which you saw on your last screen that just wasn't happening before. 32% had an improvement in customer employee retention, which this is interesting to me. So, and you tell me, Zab, if I'm making too big of a leap here, but in our State of CRM Data Health report, I think it was 2022, we uncovered that about 67% of people said that they would leave their job if things weren't done to give them a more robust CRM, data quality solutions, just making the data easier to use. I mean, these are tools, right, to do our jobs with. And so when I see this, what I've correlated is that they have improved the customer employee retention because they've improved the experience that they're going through to do their job, which directly has to correlate back to the data that they're using, because that's what they, is that too big of a leap? Am I making things up here?
No. I have experienced this myself, that I've spent so much time in the Salesforce world. If I come into organization where they don't have any CRM, and it's all, let's call it a bit legacy and spreadsheets, and a lot of time is wasted just searching for information and looking even from your own inbox. It's tough. I mean, and I'll give you even my own personal example. We've spent some time last couple of months automating through flows lots of other actions in Salesforce, how we manage a lot of case resolution, case management. We have saved about 150 hours a month for our customer success reps. Now they do more fun stuff, that they don't have to do the manual, repetitive. That's the thing with some of the jobs. Some of the jobs are so repetitive that people can only do it for so long before they go, I am dying here of boredom. Yeah. I can't do this anymore. And yeah, if you whether that's with AI, with some of it is with AI, some of it's just even standard automation. If you can take the boring stuff, the repetitive stuff out of the way, and allow people to focus on more creative stuff, work becomes more fun. Absolutely. I have no issue believing that stuff.
Awesome. So then lastly here, the last stat, 31% did see that increase in customer experience and satisfaction that they were going for. So, and I mean, that's what we all talk about, right? Like better customer experience, having a better relationship with serving people better. And I love that attitude. I think it's great. I think it's exactly where we should be focused. And I think AI is going to get us there as long as we do it properly. So just to give you a little bit of insight from this report, where they think competition is going to start heating up here in the next 2.5 years, the industries are banking, retail, professional services, and manufacturing. They're projecting that they will be accounting for more than half of the global IT spending on AI in 2026. So if you're within those industries, I think it's, a good idea to sit down and say, how are we going to digitally transform now? Because you're going to have to keep up. Any final thoughts on that before we start telling everybody how they can get started?
Could you just say on what industries again?
Sure. Banking,
Right.
retail, professional services, and manufacturing.
Huh. It's the
Surprising.
manufacturing. It's the manufacturing that I find the most surprising. But
Hmm.
yeah, if they say so, I believe them.
Yeah, I mean the way it was broken down is I guess those were the ones that were reporting like the highest investments that they were making. So I didn't dig deeper to see where it was, but now that you're sort of tilting your head to that, it might be something after this that I go and dig into a little bit to figure out why.
But it's interesting that we talk a lot about AI uh, pretty much throughout entire 2023 because Chat GPT and then Bart and all of that explosion. But when you just said banking, it hit me 4 or 5 years ago. I had a mate who was working at in some investment bank, and he once told me that they were implementing some software. Probably he said it was a bit AI to make some judgments on investments and stuff like that, and half of his floor was replaced by machines. So that was, some of that was happening probably even before it became mainstream.
Yeah, and I actually, in some of the stuff I was reading, I think they were mentioning banking as like the area where a lot of the stuff starts because the customer experience there is so critical to keeping and maintaining, customers. Excuse me. All right, let's get into how do we get started with digital transformation. And when you and I were talking, there was key themes that kept coming up. And so we decided that we should just bundle these up and say to everybody, these are things you need to be aware of. So let's just talk through them real quick, and then we'll get into some more tactical stuff that we can take home and do and start acting on so we don't feel like we're just idly planning for this big change. All right, so the first one, Zab, I'll give you this one since it's good news.
Well, yes. Well, yeah, sorry, there was an inside joke because I tend to be all gloom and bad news. But yeah, there's actually uh, the good news is that digital transformations can, or with whatever technology, AI included, can be achieved. You can achieve tremendous success if you follow certain best practices, which we've known for a long time. It's well documented in the industry. The failure rates on projects have remained fairly stable and high for decades now. But the reasons why the few that do succeed always remain the same. So there is a playbook for winning. It just, you need to adopt it.
So I think you're alluding to this next one, that the requirements for this successful stuff, it's not new. It's the same stuff we were saying to each other when we were rolling out Salesforce or whatever CRM you're working with, like garbage in, garbage out. You've got to have the setup right. You got to have the data right. Those are, I mean, this was, I hate to say it, 20 some years ago for me where I rolled out my first CRM, and they said it to me so much that I can still hear it in my head. They're like, you got to get the data right. You got to get the setup right. Like that's where they wanted the admin to focus. It had nothing else to do with the setup of, page layouts or things like that. That came next. But it was like, get this stuff right first, and you will hate me less when you move into this next step of setup because you'll have your ducks in a row. Let's see, what do we have next here? All right, so knowing how to clean up your data and metadata. I think that the cleanliness here determines the intelligence of your digital transformation, of your AI, and your ability to implement it well. I don't know if you have any other things to add to this, but I think that that's a pretty clear statement, right? Like, get it right from the beginning, set the right foundation.
Yep.
All right. Technical debt and data debt. Those are topics that we talk about kind of on the outskirts of data quality, probably a lot more in your realm, with the technical debt.
Well, technical debt, I think is and just before I get called out again, just to define the term. One definition of either technical debt or data debt, I think, is usually actually maybe the technical debt is when you make shortcuts in your design decisions and you build something just so you can get it out more quickly, but maybe it's not the most performance scalable solution. You'll have to rework it in the future anyway. In the Salesforce system, it's also used to talk about features and fields, objects, for instance, that you just keep building and adding, but maybe they're not being used. They just clutter They just create more noise and more confusion and more complexity for you to manage. The thing about technical that what we found, and this is universal, not just in Salesforce ecosystem, is no one cares about it until it becomes top priority. It's a rule. It's for some, because you don't pay attention to it until, oh, we now need to implement some very important project. And like, let's say, implements, Salesforce CPQ, like Revenue Cloud. It's like, yeah, let's do it. And our opportunity object is a mess. Damn it. We need to clean it up first. Otherwise, we can't start. It's going to take how much? How long to clean it up? Jesus. And it's one of those.
Yeah, definitely. And data debt, just again, to level set here, is similar in like, okay, I've got all this information. I just need to get it into the system so somebody can act on it. Because again, the planning, the creating the proper data to put in there feels idle, and you dump it in and you start getting all this data debt, or you dump in data you don't need that isn't useful, nobody's referencing, and like you said, it just creates a lot of noise. And those are the things that are going to be the hurdles that you have to jump over as you transform your organization digitally. Look like you had something else you're going to say there.
I was, but I'm going to leave it till the next slide.
Okay, perfect. All right. So stakeholders, getting them aligned and getting your end users involved and invested early. I'm not sure how this translates on like the Elements.cloud side, on the metadata cloud, or the meta cloud. Oh my gosh, quit saying cloud. The metadata side works. But on the data quality side, we always promote a very cross-functional team to look at how data is used, where it's used, who's using it, who should have access. And I don't think it's any different here. I think if people are going to be impacted by this, they need to be involved in the planning. They at least need to be kept abreast of all the things that are happening so they can digest and sort of be ready for the change that's coming to them.
Well, you said it at the beginning that it's the soft skills, and that getting stakeholders, both the sponsors from the some sort of executive side, managerial side, but also stakeholders in the sense of the actual users who will end up using whatever technology you put in front of them. Getting that right and getting that alignment, that buy-in, which sometimes also just means training and education and awareness. That is actually the one of the, you have different reports for why digital transformations fail. That and people's interpretation on the exact causes sometimes differ, but that always is the same across every report. Not having enough executive alignment, not getting enough buy-in or adoption from end users, confusion from end users. That's always one of the, like, at the top of the list. And you need, to your points, proper soft skills to manage that in an organization.
Yeah, and you need leadership, I think, because the word aligned here, I put in purposely, because I think stakeholders sometimes will buy in without really knowing what they're buying into, and then things start getting revealed and they hesitate to ask the question or raise the flag or whatever it is, because they don't want to disrupt a huge project like this. But I think it takes a leader to say, you know what, maybe we're not aligned on where this is going, and let's have that talk. So getting the buy-in here, I think, is actually probably going to be one of the easier steps for stakeholders, at maybe the executive level, not so much maybe at the end user level. That's always a little bit more difficult, but that alignment, I think, is where things start to break down. So what is the purpose of this? What is our goal? What are we going for? Making it very specific. I think we have a couple more here. All right. I mean, implementation, adoption, ROI timeframes. People are like, great, I'm going to put this in 2 months from now. We're going to be, blissful enjoyment. And maybe you will be, who knows? But in most situations, you have to set, I think, realistic project timelines. You have to really detail out every gory thing that has to happen. Go ahead.
So this comes back to planning, and just a quick story to demonstrate. In the United Kingdom, we've had about a couple of weeks of this particular news cycle. Birmingham City Council, which is like for Birmingham City, pretty much the biggest, one of the biggest cities, definitely in the UK, went bankrupt recently. And even though they had many different issues, financial problems, that caused that, the one that got the most media attention, and the one that people complain about the most, including the city council, were failed Oracle implementation. It was meant to cost 20 million and take like 2 years, and like 5-6 years later, it cost $100 million, and was still not delivered. And this is and that's one of the headline things in major media outlets for a couple of weeks was how failed implementation of this solution by a particular consulting firm, which should remain nameless, caused that sort of issue. And it was a classic example based on everything I've read of, like, yeah, this is the technology, let's get building and let's get to configuring it and installing it, and without really understanding what the business stakeholders want, what people are using the current solution for every day. Neither adoption or timeframes or return on investment all were really properly defined up front.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And I mean, you think about a house, right? You're not going to build the walls before you put in the foundation. That just doesn't make any sense. You have to build on that strong foundation or the whole thing collapses. All right, what's our last one here? Oh, just be sure the technology you invest in can scale. So there's solutions out there that I think are good stopgaps, stuff that you can, test the waters with, but not all of them are going to scale for the size of your growth, for the size of your data, for the size, you know what I mean? Just in general terms. I don't know if you've seen that on like the back end in the metadata stuff too, where you have limitations there. Have you seen that? Or is that just sort of like just a general, I guess, function of the technology is just that it is what it is. There's nothing we can do with the metadata to make it any better or any worse, but it's just.
When we talk about metadata, I think it's when you're investing in any technology, especially new technology, or buying a new product or new application, someone usually from IT needs to evaluate, is this something that can scale or support whatever is the scale of our business today and how we plan to grow going forward. Some platforms can, some can't, and it's just part of the validation. It's baked into the technology.
Yeah, agreed.
The right one.
All right, I'm keeping just true to time here, so I'm going to get us moving on to the next one. So where do we start? What are some of the first steps? What are those things that we can do to where we feel like we're actively participating in this and not just, thinking, which is still very active and exhausting. So for me, and I'll give you the next one to go through, but outlining the business use case, again, getting that alignment, knowing what the goals are, who is going to be impacted. So in other words, who you are going to need to train, who you're going to need to get feedback from, who you should be talking to, saying, what about your job right now is just making you nuts that you could not have to do, you would still be as successful. It would just take, priorities off your plate. And I think that is very telling of where you should start and what the business use case could be. And I see a lot of people start with sales teams. They move fast, they're the biggest, they want to move faster. And I'm not saying that's the absolute best place to start, but when I think about where we're going to make a big impact, my mind always goes to sales. So.
Well, so you raise an interesting point here, because I remember a couple of months ago there was some report. I just don't remember who published it, but it was something like Forbes or Harvard Business Review or something, like one of those. And their recommendation, or the author's recommendation, that particular article on how to get, for instance, started with AI was people are already using it. So don't ban the technology, allow people to use it, and people will figure out what they want to use it for, which I found probably realistic. But that's probably what scares a lot of organizations, is that you mean we're going to invest and give people access to AI and not really know what we're going to use it for up front. That's counterintuitive and not at all a prospect that many would find secure. So I agree. Having and then this is probably what you need some good business analysts for, is figure out which steps, which parts of how we work today are the most manual, tiresome, and usually anything to do that has to do with writing, analyzing, interpreting either numbers or text is prime great example for where probably AI can be used quite effectively to accelerate things. And and probably sales team is a great, or customer success or marketing, any of those revenue teams, as I think we sometimes call them, is a great place to start building that business case going. If we get together enough use cases for where we could potentially use it, that starts becoming a very compelling value proposition.
Yeah, agreed. And I think in that situation too, if you are going to unleash it, do it with a test group. You know, it doesn't have to be to everybody. You don't have to totally shoot yourself in the foot to learn something. You know, you can scale it out. All right, what's our next one here? Why don't you take this one, Zav? You've got some good insights on this.
Well, get familiar with your data and its setup. So one of the things that gets talked about a lot in the context of AI is this garbage in, garbage out. You will not get good results with. By the way, this is what a lot of people's experience with ChatGPT was the first time around. They would ask it very generic, vague question. It would come up with a very generic, vague answer, and they would say, hey, it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not Google search. You need to give it a bit more and then specify a bit more before you maybe get the answer you want. If your data is messed up, inaccurate, you're not gonna get good results. You're not gonna get results you trust. And if you don't trust the automation, if you don't trust the system, you don't use the system. I found, I'm sure you agree, but with any system, whether it's AI or not, if you don't, it's a binary state. Either you trust the data in it and what it does with it, or you don't. There is not, oh, I trust it 90% of the time. It's a very binary state. So getting your data clean is fundamental, although we will come into that in the next point. The setup of data is important because, well, actually, let me rephrase that, because we'll cover that in more detail in just a second. But before you, I think with any digital transformation, before you implement the to-be state, where you want to get to, you need to understand where you are today. So actually, within this point, it's more about understanding where you are with your data and the metadata or setup of your data. So understanding, do you have a problem? How big of a problem you have as far as data corruption or technical debt? Just getting that baseline. It's like having a map, and you don't know how to go north if you don't know where you are on the map. So understanding where you are on the map today, that's what it is really about in this step.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically profiling, just figuring out what the thing looks like now. All right, so clean, standardize, and verify your data. And you talked about like a chat GPT, so generative AI. And there's Florida Dreaming going on right now. And I saw an image from, I think it was the keynote, where it says, if your data is not ready for generative AI, neither is your business. Because to your point, if your data is not going to be there, if your data is so confused that the generative AI can't figure out what to use it for, your business isn't ready for it. I mean, those are just the facts of it. And I think it scares some people because they're like, well, my data is a mess. You can clean it up. It doesn't take, years to do this. It just takes a really strong concerted effort to go in there, clean it, deduplicate, standardize your values across the systems. Because remember, if you're thinking of something like Data Cloud, we're not just ingesting what's from Salesforce. We're ingesting, information from your other systems, which is great. But if there's no standard, if there's no cleanliness, if it's not verified information to be valid and accurate to what you're using it for, what exactly are you feeding this thing? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. And there's a misconception, especially with Data Cloud, where they're like, we're going to give you a unique identified record. It's like, great, you'll deduplicate my data. You'll clean it all up. They'll do some transformation stuff as it goes into the Data Cloud. That is not synonymous with, oh, I've cleaned my data in Salesforce, or I've cleaned my data in the ERP system. It is very different. And the question you have to start asking yourself is, if there are multiple records that the system is pulling from, which one is it going to pull? And with the data that I can push back into Salesforce, where's it going to put it? Because you don't know how. If you don't know, how does the AI know? You know what I mean? So if you can't answer the question, don't expect the computer to be able to, I guess, is the point here.
Oh, absolutely. So just to add to that, one of the things, especially if you're in the data cloud context, bringing data from different sources, different systems, all of a sudden making sure that the naming conventions for how you call things is pretty standardized across your systems, across your business units, becomes quite important. What is a role, or what is, let's say, a contact in Salesforce versus, let's say, in HubSpot, where other systems, what is the meaning of that? Can differ. It's the most basic example, but I've seen this so many times. Sales Cloud, right? An opportunity object, standard capability, and you've got a closed date, or like, when was this opportunity closed? seems simple enough, but for some people it means, I've seen organizations where it means that's when they've agreed to our terms. And in other organizations is when we send the quote. And in the others, it's when the quote comes, when they actually pay. And you have seemingly this one piece of data standard in every org, and every customer I see uses it slightly differently. Not only different companies, what it means to sales team versus the finance team within the same business is also different. So, there needs to be that standardization, especially, is quite important. I was feeding some AI engines data from different sources, and it took me a while to realize that there's the same terms being used for different purposes in different data sets. I got completely confused.
Yeah. Well, and so this is kind of like, if we draw it back to saying, okay, this isn't new, in my head, this is very similar to if I get a list from some, event or whatever, and I'm putting it in to Salesforce, the fields that they have in this list may not map 100% to what I have in Salesforce. And I have to figure out what that mapping is. I have to figure out what formats and standardization they've used and where I have to transform the information to make it fit for the business system. So that's what we're talking about, just on a really large scale. So like we said, not new, just a different way of looking at it. All right, this one is definitely you. So understand and optimize your data setup. And this is what you were alluding to in the last one. You're like, no, we're getting familiar with this right now. We're not doing anything with it yet. We're just getting the lay of the land. So tell us what you were holding off on before.
Well, what I mean is, I have a friend at work who uses this analogy of a river, which I find very, very nice for this. So think of your data as the water, and if it's contaminated, if it's dirty, you need to clean it up. You need to get the bad stuff out. Mm-hmm. But then there's a question of how did it get dirty or toxic in the first place? And you can put some mechanism to keep cleaning the data and trying to keep it, removing duplicates and all that stuff. But especially when you have a mechanism where maybe you feed this data constantly into your AI engine from different sources, it's a tall order. It's very difficult to actually make sure all the data is cleaned up all the time before it gets used in either your standard automations or AI. So if you understand your system configuration, how the different automations come into play with each other, what are the handoffs sometimes between, something happens in system A, it triggers this, which affects that thing in that system, which moves data from here to there. How do records, where the data comes from, manual input, automation, is there a situation when they can cross with each other? It's fundamentally understanding the source of data corruption. At the end of the day, how your systems are set up, either it might be unintuitive user interface, it could be messed up automations that don't have enough error handling, or parallel automations that might trigger not particularly thought through order. A lot of things can mess up your data, and things that you can control. If you understand how your systems are set up, how they work, you could understand where you need to fix things or remove things or change things to not, especially when humans involved, you will never get rid of manual errors completely, but how you can minimize number of errors and sources of data corruption as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. And, the metadata side of stuff, I get it. It's data about data. I'm very much in the data that's sitting there that people are using. You're on the back end of how these systems are handing it off. And I think now more than ever, the metadata is becoming increasingly more important in just what that setup looks like and how it can communicate across platforms. So this is something that you and I agree on wholeheartedly. And we had, as we were making this slide up to illustrate, these are some first steps. Do we make this a circle to get the point across? Do we just list them out simply? But the point is this is not a one and done task. If you think back again to what McKinsey said, this is continuously deploying tech at scale. If this is a continuous deployment that you're going to find yourself in, which it is, then you need to what? Continuously monitor and manage your data and metadata health. You can't have one without the other. It just doesn't exist that way. And people feel like, okay, well, that's just as exhausting as having to sift through all the data that they've pulled out of my way. But it's not. And I think, in these next couple slides, we're going to talk briefly about our products. That's not a product pitch at all, but just to let you know why we know what we know and why we're pushing this and really trying to help you understand where you can go with your data is that it's a continuous thing. Do you find a lot that people will look at their metadata and be like, great, yay, we cleaned it up, it's in a good spot, and then they just sort of forget about it until the next time something blows up? Or do you think that they adopt this idea that, okay, this is a continuous motion I need to find myself in?
I think, unfortunately, it's the former. And by the way, it's usually.
And that's fine, because I find the same thing with data quality. People are like, sweet, I cleaned up all my duplicates, they're done showing up in my deduper or whatever. And they're just like, let's push that task to the side and move on to something else. You know what I mean? So
I think probably why a lot of people have this approach, and we're going to probably talk about it in just a moment, is without proper tooling and capabilities to help you monitor and manage that process, it can be extremely manual and time consuming. So if you have proper tools that don't force you to spend that much time to monitor and solve the issue, it's much easier to make it a recurring thing, a part of your daily or weekly process. I think it's mostly when people use not necessarily built for purpose tools to address these problems. That's when they go, oh, it took us a week or 2 weeks to clean up the data. That project is now finished. Let's now focus on the other things, and we will book that same project like 6 months from now, right? And that's when you get into not good enough cadence of keeping things under control.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, if somebody's waiting 6 months to look back at their data again after they cleaned it, they're going to have a terrible surprise waiting for them. All right, so we are running a little bit over time, but this is a great conversation, and I wanted to keep it going. So these next couple slides, real quick, before we get to any Q&A, just wanted to give you an overview of, if you're new to the Validity family, what Demand Tools is, and then Xav is going to tell you a little bit about Elements.cloud. And so simply put, Validity Demand Tools, it helps you clean Salesforce data faster. It is super fast. And we've been doing this for over 20 years. So, we know what slow looks like, we know what fast looks like, and we're constantly trying to optimize because it is exhausting. It's not something you want to sit down and do every day. If a system could be set up and let it run on its own, awesome. So, what we normally say about Demand Tools, just some key points here, is that it's a secure data quality platform. You have the option of running this on the cloud or on premises, which again, those banking industries are going to love because of certain regulations. And we do this so you can constantly manage your Salesforce data to where it is trustworthy, report ready, and is enabling everybody to do their job more effectively, efficiently, and profitably, because that is what we're trying to do when we try to, do a digital transformation. So this is going to handle anything from deduplication, standardization, and mass record changes to imports, exports, record ownership management, and email verification. So all those really key things that fuel your automations or fuel your AI, you are able to go in here and clean up. You can automate it, you can schedule it, you can get your hands dirty in there and start, mixing some settings around and just really investigating what's going on. And one of the best parts about this, because we're talking about where to start, is it will tell you where your biggest problems are. If it's unstandardized data or duplicated data, so at least like, all right, I'm going to focus here because I know it's going to have a positive impact. So it's a great tool. I love it. Our customers have nicknamed it the Swiss Army knife of data quality solutions because it constantly has exactly what they need for the problem that they're facing. We had somebody, probably over a decade ago now, they called the customer success line. I was a CSM at the time, and they're like, if Demand Tools could be my boyfriend, I would totally date this tool. And it's so reliable. It does what it says it's going to do. And she just started listing all these qualities that she's looking for in a partner, but that she had found in Demand Tools, and she was just juxtaposing it against that. And that was one of my favorite calls to take. But let's talk a little bit about Elements.cloud now. Go ahead.
Yes, .cloud, as my marketing team keeps reminding me. So we are Elements.cloud is a change intelligence platform, which fundamentally we focus on helping you understand how your systems and business processes are put together so you can plan, analyze and plan how to implement change effectively and quickly. We provide automated impact analysis, ability to capture business processes, architecture designs, automatically capture the technical stories to do what do we need to build, or what tickets do we need to deliver on the expected user experience or business process. And similar to your kind of monitoring capability, but more focused on metadata. How healthy is the system? What is level of technical debt? Where is maybe the system is over customized, too complex? An ability to pretty much analyze your system configuration, Salesforce system configuration, to be more precise, pretty much however you want. So that metadata side of the question is what we are all about. We don't touch data. Metadata is complex enough to focus on that, and you focus on data, so we're very, very complementary in that regard.
Yeah, and that's why this is such a great partnership, because we can help people build those strong foundations. You know what I mean? We're not both going to do everything, but we are really good at the piece that we're doing. And we know that it's pivotal for the success that you want to experience from any digital transformation that you're taking on. And you know what's funny is when I read through like your success stories from your customers and ours, one of the things that I see pop up is basically people finding out stuff that they don't know, that they thought they knew. They're like, oh no, I don't have any unmanaged package or, Apex code that needs to be gotten rid of or whatever. And then they run your tool and they find it. Same with us. Like, no, our duplicates are fine. Nobody's really complaining. And then they run it and they're like, oh, okay, I've got 100,000 in here. I should probably clean up. So it's an enlightening experience. And, a lot of people will look at these tools and be like, you're just uncovering all the bad things I have to go figure out. But that's kind of the name of the game. We have to figure out where we've gone wrong, fix it, so we can continue on this path to getting it right.
Well, if you don't know where you are today, you cannot effectively plan where you want to be tomorrow.
Right? Isn't that like a proverb from something?
Probably.
Very familiar.
I don't think I came up with that.
We're very smart. I think that's sound advice. All right, let's go ahead and get into the Q&A. We did run a little bit over today, but like I said, this is such a great conversation, and our audience is hanging on here with us. I haven't seen anybody really drop. There's just a couple of questions that I see out there from the group here. Let's see, this one's demand tool related. So, oh, that's interesting. Outside of your product, how else can someone learn more about the current state or health of their data? So if you aren't able to download the trial of our tool, or, because there's different regulations that companies have on that stuff, you can do exception reports inside of Salesforce. You can run a report if you're curious, like if a field isn't ever being filled out, run a report to see if it's empty. And if it is, wipe it out of the, the view of your users, just delete it, get rid of it. You can do stuff like that. You can talk to your end users, which is probably going to be the most eye-opening, and ask them where they have their issues. I think those would probably be my two go-to suggestions. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, not on the data side.
You can see the Q&A. Is there anything in there for you? I don't want to just keep doing all the demand tools.
I see a question from Leanne. Can you provide some examples of how clean data and metadata have positively impacted the company's digital transformation? Well, let me yes and no. I can tell you a great example of the reverse, because it's the failures that you hear about the most, less about successes. To give you an example, 2016 or something like that, Vodafone, which is, I'm not sure you guys have it in the US, it's a mobile phone provider or network provider, was implementing a CRM system. It was Siebel, not Salesforce. And they had issue with two things. Not particularly clean data on what their customers actually have, but also on the metadata side, kind of messed up automations. And long story short, they ended up overcharging, I think 100,000 or something like of their customers, which cost the customers not much, because this was kind of pay as you go type contract, but a couple of £100,000 extra on their charges. But then the regulator got involved and slapped them with like a $5 million fine. And then, the word got out and they lost a bunch of customers. Yeah, and it was estimated in some report that this entire debacle cost them like close to $50 million. Great example of, and we're not even talking about using AI here. It's just standard CRM, some automations, not well-designed automations, mess in your data. And, and I think it was like 2% of their customers have left by the end of the year to a competition. So that's what happens if it's messed up. That, well, could happen, obviously. I could go on with some.
You like to talk about all the bad news.
I'm the bad news type of guy.
The bad news bear. Is that why okay, we're gonna have to go there later. Anyway, so the next question, and this is kind of for both of us, do I need to clean up my data or my metadata first? Do you think it matters? Because in my mind, I don't think this is like a chicken and an egg thing. I think they both need to be cleaned up, and they're probably going to be cleaned up by different teams. It's not going to be the same people doing that work. So in my mind, this can be done in tandem. Have you experienced where it's not able to be done in tandem, or is that sort of what you think as well?
That's a good question. You're right, absolutely, that usually the team who cleans up the data is not the same team that cleans up the metadata or the system configuration. But I would say it's probably best practice to try to organize the two roughly around the same time or to run parallel. Would be probably the best case scenario, because coming back to my like, okay, you have not clean data. You need to remove the duplicates and all the errors in it. Great. How did it get messed up in the first place? And if it's all manual input, great. I mean, you can probably start with the data. Do some maybe training for users, how make sure they know how to put it in correctly, and metadata maybe can be handled separately. But if you, for instance, have a lot of automations in your system which create records, update records, move records around, it's quite possible that the reason you've got messy data in the first place is because the system itself is configured in such a way it sets it wrong. And if that's the situation, and you don't know until you kind of audit both the scale of your data problem, your metadata configuration, and try to figure out where you are. Because then you can be in a situation where you clean up the data and everyone's happy. Yes, we made it. And you log in the next day and 100 flows run and a couple of Apex classes run, and you're back where you started. You have another 1,000 corrupted records and you're going, no, I just cleaned it. So right. Depends on the organization, but especially with the really large ones, I found it's probably best to try to, well, kill that dragon from both sides.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have to pull the curtain on us. We are a little bit over time here, but before I do, I want to just flip to this one. Just a reminder, you guys can go out and grab a 14-day trial of Demand Tools if you wanted to get that assessment, see where we're going. We also have an AI readiness ebook that you can download. If you can't grab the link from this deck, which you should be able to, it's available on our resource center also. Zav, this was great. It was great having you here. Thank you so much for talking to us about this and just being part of Data Insight. It was just great to have you here and very helpful. Just put a whole different lens on what we're talking about. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was fun.
I think it was too. The planning was fun. This was fun. I hope everybody else out there enjoyed it as well. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. You guys have a good rest of the day, and we will see you next time on Data Insight. Thanks very much.